Okay, you guys need to follow the steps that I have for all inverse equations, okay? So the very first step is we're gonna change the f at x into a y. So the fx is gonna become a y. Okay, that's step number one. F at x becomes y. That's step number one. Okay, so convert the f at x to a y. Second step is we are going to swap the y and x. Okay, so we're going to literally just change the spots of y and x. So change these positions is step number two. So we have x equals 4y plus 3. Okay, change the f at x to a y, then we change the spots of the y and x. And then in the above, in the steps, what step was it? Step number 3 says interchange the x and y, so it means we change them, and then solve for the new dependent variable. So now we're gonna solve for y. So now we're gonna get this y by itself. Okay, if I had to isolate for y here, or get by itself, what would be the first step? What would be the first step here? Divide by 4 will be the second step. We're gonna move the 3 over, okay, or cancel out. Okay, subtract 3, good. So we're gonna subtract 3 on both sides. Or move it over and subtract, whatever one you prefer. Okay, I'm just gonna move it down here because I know the glare is right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna move it down. So we have x minus 3 on the left, and on the right we have 4y. And now the last step is to divide by 4. Divide by 4, divide by 4. So we have y equals x minus 3 over 4, or x minus 3 over 4 equals y. Doesn't matter which way you write it. Y equals x minus 3 over 4. You can, if you want to, divide each one by 4. So this would be x over 4 and 3 over 4. That's fine. Okay, so again, step 1, change the f at x to a y. Step 2, swap the x and y. Step 3 is to isolate for y, or solve. Solve. Oh, that's right in the glare, isn't it? So step 1, change f at x to y. Step 2, swap the x and y. Step 3, isolate / solve for y. And then we have one last step, is we're now, instead of having y here, we're going to change this back into f at x, but now it's the inverse. So this becomes f inverse of x equals x minus 3 over 4. So that's step 4. So those are the 4 steps. So again, step 1, change the f at x to a y. Step 2, swap the x and y. Step 3, now we're going to solve or isolate for y. And then once we do that, our very last step, change the y into an f inverse of x. Let's give you guys a minute. Okay, so the second part of the question says to graph f at x and its inverse. So now I'm going to graph it. So what I'm going to do is just graph the first one. Okay, I'm just going to graph the function f at x equals 4x plus 3 because that's easy. See if you guys remember this from grade 9 and 10. If I have y equals 4x plus 3, where do you start with your graph? Well, it's a line, so there's no vertex. Where's the starting point? Let's see if you guys remember. Y equals mx plus b. The y-intercept, good. So 3. So we're going to start at 3. If you're not sure, just plug in values. Plug in 0. You plug 0 in here, you get 3. Plug in 1, you get 7. Plug in 2, you'll get 11. Plug in -1, and you'll get -1. Plug in -2, you get -5. Okay, so plug points in. Esther, it would be 0 and 0 if we didn't have the 3 here. So if it was just y equals 4x, then it would be 0, 0. But the plus 3 moves it up 3 spots, which is your y-intercept. Okay? Now going back from grade 9, who remembers, without plugging points in, how could I find the next point on the graph? See if you guys come up with this. Without plugging in values, what's the easy way to find the next point? Right one up 3. I think you're using the wrong number though. You're on the right track. You're on the right track. Go cross 4 and up 4. That's partially right. That's halfway. Four right, 3 up. No, right 1 up 4. Good. Who said that one? That's it. Okay, so just a refresher from grade 9. Rise over run. So up 4, 1 to the right. Up 4, 1 to the right. Just a quick way to do it. So I go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1. Gives me my second point. I'm gonna do 4 points. The next one, so then I keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1. That one's a bit high. It's kind of off the graph. Okay? Or you can go the opposite way. 4 down and 1 to the left. So 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 to the left. And then we'll have our line. If you're not sure, just plug in values. Okay, it's a line that's continuous both ways. Good guesses, by the way, guys. I'm glad you guys are participating. Okay, so now our inverse was for x minus 3 over 4. Okay, so this might be a little bit difficult to graph. Okay, so it'd be x over 4 and then a negative 3 over 4. And it's with fractions, so it becomes much more difficult to graph. What would be an easier way to graph the inverse based on what we learned? Yes, exactly. Ava or Ava? Ava. So we just use the opposite points. Good. Okay, so don't try to graph this. Like you could if you want to plug in points, but it's easier if you just swap these ones. Okay, so our first point was 0 and 3. So then if we swap it, it becomes 3 and 0. Okay, so we just change it. Then we have a point here, 1 and 7. So 1 and 7 becomes 7 and 1. Okay, and then you use this, the other one's off the chart. This one's negative 1, negative 1. If you reverse it, it's the same thing, negative 1, negative 1. And then we have one last one here, negative 2 and negative 5 becomes negative 5 and negative 2. So our inverse is as such. Okay, and again it gets reflected over the plane y equals x. Okay, so again this gets reflected this way. Does that make sense? Any questions? Again, if you're not sure, just literally just plug in points into the equation, like substitute. So plug in negative 2, plug in negative 1, plug in 0, plug in 1, plug in 2, and see what you get. And then reflect those points. Just give you guys a minute.